Africa is not poor. If Africa was poor, we would never have been colonized. Nobody would ever, set foot here to extract anything. Africa is extremely rich, has always been extremely rich, and extremely rich today in potential, not just in resources. And that's precisely why we've been colonized. That's precisely why colonial forces have never left economically. And that's precisely why the geopolitical hierarchy perceives a huge threat from unleashing that potential. So we're intentionally being kept impoverished and divided and weakened precisely because we're rich and because the richness of the African continent is spoken for by colonial forces who want to continue to extract. That's the biggest lie. But for those of us in Africa, we know this. The question is, how do we undo these traps and undo the restrictions and fully unleash our potential?
Africa is the wealthiest continent on the planet. And yet again, the people are living through excruciating poverty, so much poverty, to the point where people are willing to flee their countries and enter other countries illegally. Some people might even say that it's the government. The government failed them, and the government is now also failing South Africa. Now South Africa is going to end up in bad conditions because of this. I get that. That makes a whole lot of sense. But what if I told you that these governments are being infiltrated from inside out? These governments are stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's restrictions that are not allowing these governments to also be able to do certain things that will fully liberate the African continent, because some of these elites still have control of majority of the things on this continent. Just because you drive a nice car, just because you live in a nice house, just because you can walk to the mall and not get shot, it does not mean that you're free. It does not mean that you're liberated. Just because the president of the country is black, it does not mean that everything that belonged to the black people is back where it belongs. Welcome to the Unison YouTube channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment if you have anything interesting to share, because on this channel, I'm going to debunk a couple of things that a lot of people are not paying attention to, because I can tell you right now, this chaos that's happening on the planet is orchestrated. These things that are happening in South Africa are orchestrated. It's not a coincidence that so many things are happening simultaneously, and while you're looking in that direction, something else is happening over there. But without wasting any time, let me not talk too much. Let's get into the video.
We cannot have Africa united or in control of its own resources. But neocolonialism was in part responsible for the coup because it exposed, the workings of international finance capital in Africa. Actually gave charts showing the network of these big foreign companies that were exploiting Africa's resources. And that was probably the final straw in deciding this dangerous man has got to be removed. We cannot have Africa united or in control of its own resources. And so that was a factor, because it had such an impact in America. The American government immediately stopped aid to Ghana when that book was published, yes, and lodged a very strong diplomatic complaint, through their embassy in Accra.
Africa is the richest place on earth. Africa is not poor in terms of wealth in resources, which is largely kind of what the value of money represents in the first place. This is the wealthiest place. Now, there are a lot of people in Africa living in horrific poverty, particularly the people living in some of the very, very resource wealthiest regions. For some, mysterious reason. Like the people living here in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is, in terms of resources per capita, arguably the very wealthiest country on the face of the earth. Here are some of the working conditions that the people of arguably one of the wealthiest countries on the face of the earth are subjected to. Now, what that should tell us is that other people than the people who are actually from these countries are primarily the ones exploiting and enjoying the wealth generated by the resources that rightfully belong to the people from these countries. Which I suppose is kind of a wordy, overcomplicated way of saying theft is obviously occurring here. Now, the current popular way to try and explain this corruption away is by just saying, well, it's corrupt African leaders. They just have too many corrupt African leaders. But corrupt how, I wonder? We seem to be gently glossing over just how incredibly profitable this so-called local corruption is for giant multinational, multi-trillion-dollar, largely Western corporate interests. It seems to me that trying to pretend that those giant foreign financial interests aren't directly responsible for installing and upholding the power of those corrupt leaders is a silly, obviously stupid position to try and cling to. Luckily, we don't have to just stop there at corporations bad and then shrug it off and go about our day like there's nothing we can do. See, this is all made profitable through mass consumption, which means that the fuel, the lifeblood that keeps the engine of greed and theft and slavery and exploitation running is the consumer. It's us. All we have to do here is buy less crap, buy things secondhand, buy more local from smaller businesses, buy things that are made with care and built to last, punish waste and planned obsolescence. Now, considering that those giant multi-trillion-dollar financial interests are probably the exact same ones causing most of the corruption and exploitation in your country too, this is not even an act of charity. I'm not telling you to do this to help somebody else. Do it to help yourself. This is an act of self-preservation.
You know, the way I'm looking at it, if other countries don't do the same thing that South Africa did in terms of March and March, then the whole African continent can just forget it. Because nobody's coming to save Nigeria. Nobody's coming to save Malawi. Nobody's coming to save Ghana unless if these people stand up for themselves. They do not have a choice. They need their own version of March and March. They need to stand up to their government. They need to make sure that their government is enforcing the laws. They need to make sure that their needs are being met by the people that they put in positions of power. Because even South Africa, your government is failing you right now. It's failing you right now. And it's the people that you put in power. You have the power to make a difference in your country because your government is supposed to serve you, not the other way around. But the whole African continent is going to collapse if everybody's going to flee their countries and they're going to run to South Africa. South Africa cannot hold everybody else. It is essential for Ghana to stand up for itself. It is essential for Nigeria to stand up for itself. These people need to stand up for themselves in their own country because it is their ancestral land. It is their ancestral land. We get it. There's forces at play that have caused all these things. And you all need to understand that some of these countries have been infiltrated from the inside out. There is governments from other countries from outside of the African continent that are causing these things to happen. And the only thing that you guys can do is fight for yourself. You cannot run anymore because there's nowhere else to run. You're going to try to run overseas and you're going to try to run to a different continent and then they send you back. What do you do now? You come to South Africa. South Africa sends you back. What do you do now? People have no choice but to stand up for themselves and fight in their own countries. That's the only way that Africa can unite. Africa will only unite once everybody just looks within themselves and everybody works on themselves and everybody makes a decision to change their governments. Work better. Make decisions that are going to benefit you and your children on your land. It is your ancestral, it's your ancestral land. It is your birthright. It's the only way. It's the only way.
We can ask you, if your lands were so great, why didn't you stay in them? Why did you go all around the world, invade our countries, occupy our countries, colonize our countries? Why couldn't you stay where you were if it was so brilliant and so wonderful? I mean, why are there 20 million people of British and European descent even in Australia to begin with, if the West is so wonderful? You came to our shores long before we ever came to your shores, and you brought nothing but ruin and misery. So you can't blame us for trying to escape what you caused, what you brought. You took everything from us, and then when we try to go to where you took everything of ours, you vilify us. You say we are illegal immigrants. We are illegal for trying to escape your crimes. You took everything from us, and it's illegal for us to go to where you took it. And the fact that you could take it, the fact that you are successful criminals, you think that that makes you a great so-called civilization, while you're nothing but criminals. Nothing but pirates and marauders, thieves and mass murderers. You pave over the bodies of your victims, and then you brag about your infrastructure. Thing we can ask you if you
Wake up, Africans. Africa, wake up.
Africa doesn't need help. Africa needs to wake the hell up. Africa doesn't need aid. Africa needs a revolution. And the first step is waking up. This continent isn't poor. It's been kept poor deliberately. And not by some invincible hand, but by a system of elites still serve colonial interests, ladies and gentlemen. They wear suits, they sit in palaces, and watch while the masses scrape by. And all that while the West profits off Africa's misery. Africa's problem isn't the lack of resources. It's the lack of willpower and the lack of unity. Mental colonialization is the real epidemic. The chains are not just physical, they are in the mind too. Europe doesn't need to colonize Africa anymore. Africa colonizes itself. Kwame Nkrumah said it, we cannot consider ourselves free until we've freed our minds. Political independence without mental decolonization is a mirage. Leaders speak of freedom, yet they keep their people shackled to foreign currencies, foreign religions, and foreign languages. And until Africans demand unity, self-respect, they are not free. If Africa keeps bowing to the West, it will never be free.
Sounds to me like Africans don't own anything. And if you don't own anything, what exactly is the difference between slavery back then and slavery now? It's just that there's no violence. I mean, you don't own anything. You don't own any of the mines. You don't really own the land. You can't really reproduce any products for yourself. You can't own farms. You don't really have much as Africans. This thing has gotten to the point where it's even psychological. They made black people believe that they're incapable of creating things. It's bad. Africans need to wake up. People need to stand up for themselves. Otherwise, this agenda in 2030, it's not going to be nice for Africa. It's not going to be nice.
That's why the world is the way it is. Why do we have organizations like the United Nations? Why do we have international development aid? The goal, guys, is to identify the possibility of a leader emerging and make sure he does not emerge. You understand? Okay? If you left Africa alone, Africa would be a lot better. But because you have all these schools, all these NGOs, all these organizations in Africa, what they're really doing is ensuring that Africa is in a continuous state of development. Okay? If you just left them alone, they might starve, but at the same time, a great leader might emerge to unite all of them. You understand? Okay? But we'll talk about this next class, how the American Empire controls the world.
How the American Empire controls the world. Right, that's it for the video. Thank you for watching the video. I hope this was informative. I hope this brought some sort of awareness to you. I hope this makes you realize that there's much darker things happening in the background. I hope this proves that if Africans don't stand up for themselves, there's no escape. Things are only gonna get worse from here. Trust me. I mean, if all Africans don't stand up for themselves in their own countries to the point where they can claim the rights of their land and they take over what belongs to them, then Africa cannot unite. As long as people are going to flee their countries, and not resolve their problems, Africa is not going to grow. People need to resolve their problems. People need to make sure that they face the challenges that they're going through. It is the only way that Africans can be able to work together, and Africans can be able to resolve the issues for the whole African continent.